AHRQ was created almost 20 years ago, and a big part of transitioning a fairly small organization that had been part of the Assistant Secretary for Health's office, focused on organization and financing, was really about asking questions about which treatments work for which individuals under which circumstances. I think that will all sound familiar. Now, my very first day on the job in late 1990, I went off to a meeting with all of the PORT researchers. This will be a test to see how old you are. Patient outcome research teams, sort of a centerpiece of some of the agency's original research investments. And what I remember is we all went off to CMS and everyone complained vociferously, bitterly, with great gusto about having access to Medicare data and not being able to get the files they needed. Some of you may have had a similar kind of experience. We're now right on the cusp of an era where we can get all the data we want. So I really want to salute Cliff and his team for having this conference, because the methods and the details really, really matter. We're moving past a place where data are a scarce resource to one where data is ubiquitous, excuse me. They're everywhere, right? Everybody's got a database, and we've got to try to figure out how do we get meaning out of that. So as Cliff noted from the latest chapter that was released yesterday, I just wanted to remind you that there's a special supplement to medical care available free of charge from our clearinghouse. You can just get to our website. If anyone has any problems, don't hesitate to email me. Again, with increased availability of data, getting the methods right is really, really important. And we've been really astonished and thrilled by the outpouring of interest and enthusiasm. The only activity I've ever been lobbied for at AHRQ was a methods symposium about a year ago. Now, understand that it was possible to participate online, and hundreds of people did that. But for a seat in the room, you wouldn't believe it. People I went to high school with, I haven't heard from since, definitely needed to get a chair. So I want to just touch briefly on the following topics, and I would just underscore that part of the reason it's so important to get the methods right is that increasingly we're seeing in legislation the opportunity to inform policy with science, and I think that's a terrific development. But again, the details really, really matter in terms of getting it right. So I see CER as a big part of that, but actually not the only piece. So just at a glance, our priorities currently, very strong focus on patient safety, the evaluating applications of health IT to make sure they improve quality and safety, and a little bit of trying to figure out how can we actually use electronic health records to get the kind of data that we want. It's not quite as easy as it sounds. The aspiration is cool. Actually getting there is going to take some work. And of course, as Cliff noted, a very specific program in effective health care. Two brief comments. Our authority in Section 1013 of the Medicare Modernization Act, or drug bill, included two additional components. There's three pieces of it. The middle one is conduct and support research and synthesis, and Cliff and his team have been a really huge part of that work from the get-go. The first part essentially says that researchers do not set the priorities alone, that the secretary sets the priorities but has to be informed by broad input from multiple stakeholders. So for those of you who've contributed to that dialogue, thank you. We'll continue to pester you in the future. The third part says that we have to make the materials available in a way that's accessible to multiple audiences. This means going way, way, way beyond the patient page in journals. I personally love them. It's like a little Cliff Notes for keeping up outside your area of expertise. It's not really enough for people with limited health literacy to contemplate an array of choices, which is pretty cognitively challenging. So, of course, we're very excited to hit a high water mark for AHRQ's budget, proposed budget for fiscal year 11. I'll leave it at that. This just gives you a breakout of how we made investments with the $300 million allocated to AHRQ. For the past 4 years, we had received a total of $129 million from the Congress. Now, as Mike Lauer, my terrific colleague from NIH, may remind you later, that might be one clinical trial. So we weren't doing clinical trials, but indeed what we were focused on was building the infrastructure, including data analytics and methods, to be able to take our time. So the big interest here was that for our $300 million from the Recovery Act, we were able to make a big investment in evidence generation. For those of you who have submitted for the Choice Initiative, decisions coming soon, that's all I can tell you. Across the $1.1 billion, you can see that just under 2/3 was invested in specific research topics, and Dr. Lauer can also assure you how hard we work to make sure that the investments between NIH, AHRQ, and the Office of the Secretary were tightly coordinated, which sounds like more fun than it actually is, but it was very, very important. Importantly for today's conversation, 1/4 of the money was invested in data infrastructure, 12% in dissemination. At the end of the day, where we're heading from AHRQ's perspective is actually getting this information down to the front lines of care. Notice how this rolls right off my tongue. It is news to a lot of people that they should be playing a participatory role in care. You may see some ads that we're releasing with the Ad Council today in time for Father's Day, encouraging men to get preventive health care. But ultimately, we're seeing more and more interest among consumers, us aging baby boomers, to say nothing of the digital natives coming behind us who just presume that Google is a second opinion for everything. But we've got to have the methods, tools, and actual information to share. Now, this just gives you a picture of the framework for comparative effectiveness that is part of the entire HHS spend plan. What I would call your attention to is, in AHRQ's view, this research platform, including infrastructure, methods, and training, extends right to the front lines of care. Now, again, that's aspirational for many people in the room. There's a lot of very specific challenges to address to get there, but we see that if we're going to get this information to the front lines of care, they too need to be part of this enterprise. In other words, we can learn as a byproduct of all the information we collect every single day, every encounter in healthcare delivery.